the good work he's done over all these years. Now, Mr. President, in accordance with Rule 5 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, I move to suspend Rule 22, Paragraph 2, for the purpose of proposing and considering the following motion to commit, which is at the desk with instructions, H.R. 5297. And I move to commit H.R. 5297 to the Committee on Finance with instructions to report the same back to the Senate with changes to include a permanent extension of the research tax credit. Okay. Now, Mr. President, this motion is a simple one. It is a motion to suspend the rules to allow for the consideration of a motion to commit the bill before us to the Finance Committee, upon which both Senator Grassley and I sit, with the specific instruction to add to the bill a permanent research tax credit. Now, it's a simple motion, but I believe it is a significant moment. The American people understand that there is a desperate need for jobs and growth, and they have heard that Washington is partisan, broken, and unable to respond to their genuine needs. And just last week, they heard that President Obama proposed a permanent research credit as an additional step, quote, to grow the economy and help businesses spur hiring, unquote. Well, we can address all three with my simple motion. Make the research credit permanent, do it in a bipartisan spirit, and give job creation a jump start that it badly needs. It seems like a pretty good idea to me, but the track record so far is very disappointing. Making the credit permanent is exactly what Senator Baucus, the distinguished chairman of the Finance Committee, and I proposed to do in the bill we introduced last year. We've been introducing this same idea for many years now, and yet the Senate does not seem to be able to do anything more than extend the credit on a very temporary basis. In recent weeks, I've been trying to add a research credit extension to the small business lending bill that is before us today. Unfortunately, my efforts have been in vain because the leader has filled the amendment tree, and I've not had the opportunity to offer such an amendment to this bill. Frankly, the way this Senate has been run has been very, very much to criticize. This is supposed to be the most important deliberative body in the world, and yet almost every bill that has any controversy to it at all, they bring it to the floor, fill up the tree, forbid the minority to have any chance to have any amendments, and in the process stultify the legislation. Now, it's easy to see why adding a research tax credit incentive to this bill is a high priority. Obviously, President Obama thinks it should have a high priority. He was very specific last week in making it clear that this is a step we should take to grow the economy and to help businesses spur hiring, bringing people on board to work. Here we have a small business tax bill that has been proposed by the majority party. Yet it does not include a very important provision that has long enjoyed bipartisan support from most members of the Senate. And now we have the President of the United States specifically calling for this provision to be enacted to grow the economy and help businesses spur hiring, for which I give him great credit. This, too, I believe, is the underlying purpose of this small business bill. The strange thing is that my pleadings for this provision to be added to this bill have so far fallen on deaf ears. Therefore, I've had to resort to this procedural motion to suspend the rules in order for this provision to be added to the bill. Since the parliamentary tree is tied up and we don't even have a chance for amendments, I couldn't bring it up as an amendment other than this way. I would have thought this would have been unnecessary. After last week's proposal by the President, I would have expected that members of his own party might have acted to include the research credit extension on the first possible legislative vehicle. And this bill is that vehicle. But no, this bill is moving forward towards passage in the Senate with nary a word from the majority about the provision that the President just proposed just last week. He said it was important. He wants it. It's something we ought to do. And above all, it would be bipartisan. one of the few things that we've been able to do in a bipartisan way since this administration took over. Perhaps most of my colleagues on the other side were on the beach and away from television and the newspapers and did not see or know about the President's call for a permanent research credit. For those of my colleagues who might not have heard about the President's call for permanent research credit, let me share a couple of facts that he, our President, put forward. He said a permanent extension of the research credit is, quote, a win-win, encouraging job growth and investment now that will pay off with stronger economic growth in the future, unquote. Again, I could not agree more with the President. And President Obama also said that economic growth is the single best way to bring down the deficit. There are some things our President says that make a terrific amount of sense, and this is one of them. Because this bill before us today is supposed to be all about job creation and growing the economy, and because the President has renewed his call for a permanent extension of the very important research credit, it seems to me that this motion would be unnecessary. I would have thought, as I said before, that the leadership would have taken care of adding this item to this bill. I think most everyone will agree that this might very well be the only tax bill that even has a remote chance of passage and enactment before the election next month. Surely the majority leader does not plan to simply ignore the President's call for passing a permanent extension of the research credit. Well, since he either forgot to add this priority or decided to ignore the President, I am offering this motion as a way to remind him and a way to allow it to happen before this bill comes up before a final vote. Now, I urge all my colleagues to consider the implications of this country dropping to a second-tier industrial power. Our economy has been both short-term and long-term filled with problems. In the short run, we are not producing the number of new jobs we need. Our economy is not growing nearly as rapidly as we would all like, and it is not generating near enough monies or enough revenue to the Treasury. In the lower run, we are facing some severe competitiveness issues with our U.S. firms in competition with foreign firms. The federal government has unfortunately saddled them with high taxation, more onerous regulations, and an unfriendly business climate. We are the second highest taxed. We have the second highest corporate taxes in the world. In the high technology area, along with other sectors of our economy that are even more global in nature, we have even more difficult challenges. Our international tax rules are very inhospitable to U.S.-based firms. This is one of the reasons why the U.S. no longer dominates the list of having the largest companies in the world. One particular, in fact, I believe in 1980, of the 50 largest companies in the world, we had 39 of them. Today, we have 16. And it's because of these stupid rules that have been put in place, these stupid tax approaches, that we could change if we really wanted to do something about jobs in our society today. Now, one particular danger is that many of our trading partners have enacted very generous tax incentives in an attempt to lure away research and development from our country to theirs. There was a time not very long ago when the U.S. was considered the only real place in the world where companies wanted to conduct the research or their research and development. We had the best research scientists and the best facilities in the world. Mr. President, this time is no more. We can no longer make this boast. Many other places offer world-class facilities and scientists just as well-trained and experienced as ours, many of whom have been trained right here, that we push out of our country because we won't expand our H-1B immigration rules. Talk about stupidity. And now they also offer tax incentives to companies that are far superior to our country's tax incentives for our companies and for companies overseas. In fact, at this time, we can offer no tax incentives for U.S. research and development because the credit expired last December. The research tax credit is a provision that has been in the tax law since 1981. It's been extended by Congress more than a dozen times. This credit has wide and deep bipartisan support in this body, as has been demonstrated numerous times. More importantly, however, is the fact that the research tax credit is a vital incentive to business enterprises of all sizes in this nation. In my home state of Utah, there are hundreds of small, high-technology companies and firms that spend a high percentage of their revenue on research and development. In fact, Utah has more than 5,000 technology companies. Every state wants to attract companies like these because their jobs are generally better paying private sector jobs than most private sector jobs. On average, high-tech jobs pay 69% more. This R&D is vital to the future survival of these firms. No high-tech company can afford to ignore research if it wants to be around next year, or maybe even in the next quarter. The research credit is, in my thinking, the most urgent and important to our economy, our competitiveness, and to those hundreds of smaller high-technology companies in Utah. We have before us on the floor a small business bill. This bill is designed to strengthen our small businesses, which most of us acknowledge comprise the strongest component of our job creation engine in this economy, and to help them to do what they obviously are not doing very well at this time, and that is to grow and bring on more new workers. The tax portion of this small business lending bill is a good package, which I support. I think we do need to pass these tax provisions in this bill before us on the floor. However, it would be a grave mistake for us to think that this is all we need to do to solve the job creation problems in our economy right now. Far from it. We should be adding many provisions to this small business tax bill. These include the extension of the tax relief provisions passed in 2001 and 2003. That tax relief is important. However, since this is the subject of an intense partisan debate in the Senate right now, this just does not seem plausible. It seems reasonable, however, that we could all agree to add the most prominent tax provision the President is calling for. This is a bipartisan provision, the Research and Development Tax Credit, and making it permanent. It has wide and deep support on both sides of the aisle, here and in the House. Republicans are saying yes to the President on this. It is the members of his own party that seem to be saying no, even though I think most of them will vote for this if that's a chance to be heard and voted upon. As Congress tries to address the job situation, we need to keep in mind that one of the best things we can do to retain and create good jobs in the U.S. is to incentivize research activities. One of the best ways of doing this is to ensure that we have an effective tax policy to keep research here in our own country. Unfortunately, many of our trading partners now have strong tax inducements for companies to perform research overseas. Research and development jobs are high-paying, and they're very desirable jobs. Moreover, R&D very often leads to other kinds of economic development and the creation of even more jobs. We simply cannot afford to lose our lead in research by not keeping the United States as the premier location in the world to perform research and development. Having a robust research credit is a key to this. The President understands it's a key to this. And I think he and I surely hope my colleagues will wake up and help make this happen before it's too late and we have to work to get back what once was ours. Now,